everyone, and thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Susan Ilian in Lagos, Nigeria. Coming up on the program today, Libyan authorities claim up to 20,000 people have died in floods caused by Storm Daniel that devastated the country. Plus, convicted murderer who escaped from Pennsylvania jail is captured with some canine help. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Susan Ilian. We continue our coverage on Libya, where officials say between 18,000 to 20,000 people are feared dead after catastrophic floods deluged the east of the country on Sunday. The mayor of Derna's estimate is based on the districts that were destroyed when two dams burst. Unrecovered bodies remain under rubble or in the sea, increasing the risk of disease. The United Nations is warning of the danger of disease due to contaminated water as the water well system is infected. In the meantime, international efforts to help Libya are gathering pace, even as rival governments have requested aid. They seem to have put aside their differences, at least for now, to coordinate relief efforts.
It seems differences in opinion can cost lives, as rescue operations are complicated by political fractures in the country of 7 million people that has been at war, on and off, with no strong central government since the NATO-backed uprising that toppled Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. This is the opinion of the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, who says lives were lost to lack of planning.
Met service is practically not functioning because they are not able to operate, and the observing network has been very much destroyed. The IT systems have been destroyed, and although Libya used to be a wealthy country with fairly modern services in the past, but due to this inaction of the meteorological service, the flooding event just came there, and there was no evacuation taking place because there was not the proper early warning services in place.
An internationally recognized government of national unity, GNU, is based in Tripoli in the west, while a parallel administration operates in the east, including Derna. Talas says WMO had previously been in touch with Libyan authorities to assist them in reforming the country's meteorological system, but the efforts were hampered by a dire security situation. With thousands dead or missing and tens of thousands displaced in the aftermath of floods in Libya brought on by Storm Daniel, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is soliciting international aid.
I'm profoundly distressed that thousands of lives have been so brutally swept away in eastern Libya. And so many more people have lost their loved ones, their homes, their communities, and their access to basic needs. Storm Daniel is yet another lethal reminder of the catastrophic impact that the changing climate can have on our world. I call on all Libyan political actors to overcome deadlocks and divisions and to act collectively in ensuring access to relief. This is a time for unity of purpose. All those affected must receive support, without regard for any affiliations. It is important that particular care is taken to ensure protection of groups in vulnerable situations who are rendered even more at risk in the aftermath of such a disaster. Human rights need to be at the center of the response to this heartbreaking situation. We need to invest in prevention and resilience. I stand in solidarity with the people of Libya with my deepest heartfelt condolences to those who are mourning irreplaceable losses.
Storm Daniel, which wrought devastation across the Mediterranean in the past week, killed 15 people in central Greece, where it dumped more rain than previously recorded before sweeping across to Libya. Global warming means the region may have to brace up in the future for increasingly powerful storms of this kind, the Mediterranean's equivalent of a hurricane, known as a medicane. Meanwhile, aid donated from several parts of Libya is slowly trickling into the devastated city of Derna, days after the storm. A torrent unleashed by a powerful storm burst dams on Sunday night and cascaded down a seasonal riverbed that bisects the city, washing multi-story buildings into the sea with sleeping families inside. Confirmed death tolls given by officials so far have varied, but all are in the thousands, with thousands more on lists of the missing. Derna Mayor Abdul Menam Al-Gethi says deaths in the city could get to 20,000 based on the extent of the damage.
In Brazil, some residents in the southern state of Rio Grande do Sul are concerned about the new cyclones that have struck, coming 1 week after an extratropical cyclone left at least 41 people dead and thousands homeless. Drone footage from Esteo, a city near the state capital city of Porto Alegre, showed landslide and flooded roads as locals waded through muddy streets. Brazil's National Institute of Meteorology warned of a new extratropical cyclone developing at the Rio Grande do Sul coast between Wednesday and Thursday that could leave between 80 millimeters and 150 millimeters of precipitation. The National Institute of Meteorology says in the Porto Alegre metropolitan region it could reach over 100 millimeters. And switching to another deadly disaster. It's almost a week now since a devastating earthquake rocked Morocco. Many people continue to pick up the pieces of what is left of their homes and businesses. Quake survivors are struggling to find refuge, and those who have lost loved ones are trying to live with their reality.
In this tiny village of Otagri in Morocco, survivors take refuge in a local school after losing their homes in the 6.8 magnitude quake that struck the high Atlas Mountains. Inside the rooms with huge cracked walls and cold temperature, survivors are gathered, some of whom sleep on the ground, fearing abnormal sounds and traumatized by the massive earthquake.
We suffered, and we are still sad. We have no food, nowhere good to sleep. It's not just about the collapsed houses that we are sad. A house can be rebuilt later, but I lost my normal life. Everything from our life is gone. We have nothing to do. We have nowhere to escape. If death comes, then it will come. We are suffering. Everything is falling apart.
Ekroch also complained that the children are losing their studies due to the number of people that are taking shelter in schools. This school is for little kids, she says. Otagri was almost entirely flattened, and where 4 people were killed. Homeless survivors have spent 5 nights since the quake, sleeping outside in the schoolyard, one of the few spaces not covered in rubble. Elsewhere, some villagers who've lost everything are fending for themselves amid the ruins of their homes, with roads still blocked by landslides. 19-year-old student Imani Ait says she was studying in First City when she heard the news of the earthquake that had hit her hometown of Talat Nyako. 10 of her relatives lost their lives, including her 12-year-old brother.
My brother was a very kind boy. All the neighbors knew him and cried over him when he died, because whenever anyone asked him for something or do them a favor, he never refused. Or even if he saw a woman holding something heavy, he would go to help her. He did well at school. He just passed the second year of secondary school this year. He passed with 14 out of 20 points to move to the third year. 2 days before the earthquake, he enrolled in school and bought books to start studying.
In the midst of the devastation and trauma, villagers are receiving medical attention and trauma support at a field hospital in Asni. In Asni, a transport and shopping hub for surrounding villages, this military field hospital has been treating patients since Monday. People here are not only receiving medical care, eye care and surgeries, and are being supported for trauma reasons. Alongside Asni's hospitals were rows of large blue and green tents provided by the government for displaced people. Among the tents, children are bouncing on a trampoline. The 6.8 magnitude quake killed at least 2,901 people and injured 5,530, according to the latest official figures, making it Morocco's deadliest since 1960 and the most powerful since at least 1900.
Authorities in India are scrambling to limit the spread of a rare and deadly brain-damaging Nipah virus that has killed 2 people so far. With 3 more people testing positive, the southern state of Kerala has shut some schools, offices, and public transport services to tackle the virus. The state is battling its 4th outbreak since 2018 of a virus for which there is no vaccine and which spreads through contact with the body fluids of infected bats, pigs, or people, killing up to 75% of those infected. Kerala's first Nipah outbreak killed 21 of the 23 infected, while subsequent outbreaks in 2019 and 2021 killed 2 people. Experts have also fanned out in Kerala to collect samples of fluid from bats and fruit trees in the region. Joining us now is public health expert and virologist Dr. Akyala Ishaku. Dr. Ishaku, thank you for joining us on the program today. My first question to you is, how is the Nipah virus different from other viruses that we have encountered in recent times?
Yeah, I think, thank you for having me. Nipah virus is not different from other viruses. It is an old and emerging virus. You will agree with me that the virus in India, there was an outbreak in Malaysia too in 2018. It's just that the case fatality rate of Nipah virus is between 45 to 90%. So it is much more deadlier than the COVID-19 virus or the SARS-CoV-2 virus. But one unique thing about Nipah virus is that it has a confined geographical locations, and so it has not yet been declared as a pandemic by the WHO. This is because it is confined to certain geographical locations like Asia and part of the Pacific. And so it's not different from other viruses. Although it is a zoonotic viral disease that can be transmitted from animal to humans.
And Doctor, the virus is well known in Southeast Asia, but India is only in the south of Asia. Do you have any idea how the virus could have been transported there?
Yeah, so the virus did not was not transported from any other part of the country down to India. No, the virus is originally a normal flora of the bark, and you know that bark it doesn't cause disease in bark, but fruits that are contaminated with these viruses. Because this bark get these fruits as their source of food, then now these contaminated fruits are now being eaten either by pigs. So you can find out, you will discover that there are 2 groups to this virus. So there is one host, which is the bat, that serves as a reservoir, and then another host which serves as a host, which is the pig. And so the geography and the weather and climatic conditions of southern parts of the Asia Pacific favors the flourishing of these viruses. And you will also agree with me that understanding the demographics and the climate adaptation of a lot of viral diseases also longer and the virus is being transported into India. No, that the virus domicile in India, it can be also transmitted from India to other parts of the world.
Dr. Ishaku, before I ask you your next question, I just want to make sure that you're speaking as loudly and clearly as possible, because I want our audiences to be able to hear everything you're saying. So if I can just ask you to project a little bit more strongly. My next question to you is, what is the possibility of the spread of this virus? Because now that India has alerted health authorities, the rest of the world should be on alert too.
Also, I think that we need to also place this viral outbreak on alert. This is because you know that with globalization and increase in travels, India has a very huge population. And so you need to also understand that the globalization plays a kind of a critical role in transmission of diseases across the world. We saw that during COVID when there was a lockdown, when we also declared a lot of lockdowns here in Africa and also in Nigeria and all other parts of the world. So we need to be concerned about this. This is because of the huge population of India and then also because of globalization and international travel.
And what sort of healthcare is provided for people who have contracted the virus? Is there a healthcare that's available for them?
Absolutely. So there is a treatment regimen that was set up by the WHO for that. I hope you know that Nipah virus don't have a vaccine yet. So there are no vaccine regimen for this virus. But we can do, there has been treatment regimen that have been rolled out by the WHO where we treat the signs and symptoms of this disease. And if these signs and symptoms are properly managed, they tend to also be a self-limiting viral disease. So there are treatment regimens for this that has been rolled out by the WHO. And so it can be managed strictly on isolation centers where an infected person can be isolated and quarantined, and appropriate treatments are being given to infected individuals.
All right, well, that's good to know. And finally, how does one prevent the virus?
So we need to actually engage in personal hygiene. We need to actually, that a lot of the foods that we eat must be properly washed. So we talk about the non-pharmaceutical measures of proper hand washing. We need to make sure that our foods are properly safe. They are not being contaminated by most of these rodents that we have in our homes. So that the moment we are able to cut down the transmission dynamics of these viral diseases that is zoonotic in nature of animal origin to humans, we will be able to eliminate the virus. And so there are a lot of preventive measures that need to be brought to bear, and which critically includes personal hygiene and then proper cooking of our food, and be able to keep our food away from rodents, and then be able to break our interface with the animal population.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Akiala Ishaku, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Let's switch to U.S. politics now. The White House has denounced the plan by Republicans to launch an impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre called the effort baseless, adding that no evidence has been produced by Republicans as they investigate the business dealings of his son, Hunter Biden. The inquiry is centered on whether Biden benefited from Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings.
You see Republicans in Congress, right? They have spent all year investigating the president. That's what they have spent all year doing, and have turned up with no evidence, none, that he did anything wrong. I mean, that is what we've heard over and over again from their almost year-long investigation, and that's because the president didn't do anything wrong. Even House Republicans have said. The evidence does not exist. The House Republicans have said that. To my friend in the back who just yelled at, which is incredibly inappropriate, but House Republicans have said that it doesn't exist. Their own investigation have actually debunked their ridiculous attacks. And the only reason Speaker McCarthy is doing this political stunt, and we have seen it, you all have reported, is because Majority Taylor Greene has said she threatened to shut down the government. Can you imagine shutting down the government over a political stunt? And we're talking about vital programs that American families need. And And she said that because she wanted him to actually do this. And if he didn't, she would shut down the government. And you have Matt Gaetz as well, threatened to oust him as speaker if he didn't do it. So he didn't even put up for a vote, as you all know, because he knows that even his own members weren't going to support this. So, that's why we call it baseless. That's why I just called it baseless, because they have said themselves that there is no evidence. The evidence does not exist, and this is a political stunt. But here's the thing, and I say this all the time, we look forward to working with Republicans in a bipartisan way to actually deal with issues that matter to Americans, real issues that matter to Americans, not this baseless effort that they have continuing to do that shows no evidence.
A recent U.S. Iran prisoner swap is drawing criticism from the opposition party in the U.S. The White House is defending its decision, saying Iran gets no U.S. sanctions relief from the deal. According to an official document, the United States waived sanctions to allow the transfer of $6 billion in Iranian funds from South Korea to Qatar, a step needed to carry out a previously announced U.S.-Iran prisoner swap. The broad outlines of the U.S.-Iran deal, under which 5 U.S. citizens detained by Iran would be allowed to leave in exchange for the transfer of the funds and the release of 5 Iranians held in the United States, were made public on August 10th.
If Iran tries to divert the funds, we'll take action and we'll lock them up again. I also want to be clear. This is not a payment of any kind. It's not ransom. These aren't U.S. taxpayer dollars. And we haven't lifted a single one of our sanctions on Iran. Iran will be getting no sanctions relief. When we're trying to bring Americans home, we often aren't dealing on a level playing field. We have to use the leverage we have to bring them home. They aren't going to be released for nothing in exchange. But I don't think we should lose sight of the bottom line here, and that's that we're working to free these innocent Americans who did nothing wrong, had no reason to be detained, bring them home to their families, bring them home whole and safe again. That's the goal. This is the deal that we were able to strike to secure the release of 5 Americans. It would be great, wonderful, if we could just pick up the phone and call the mullahs and say, hey, we want our Americans back, send them back on the next plane. But you and I both know that's not going to happen, particularly with Iran. And getting Americans home requires decisions, sometimes really tough decisions. It requires compromise. It requires negotiations. It requires negotiations with people you really would rather not be sitting across the table from, but you got to do it. Because Americans overseas in trouble, wrongfully detained, need to know, and their families need to know, that this president and this administration will do what it takes to bring them home. We're comfortable in the parameters of this deal. I've heard the critics, that they're getting the better end of it. Ask the families of those 5 Americans who's getting the better end of it, and I think you'd get a different answer. We're comfortable with the parameters of this deal. We're comfortable that there'll be enough restrictions, quite frankly, very rigid restrictions, on the Iranians' ability to use this money. And we make no apologies for the fact that we're going to get these 5 Americans home just as soon as possible. The president has said many, many times, we're not going to allow Iran to ever achieve a nuclear weapons capability. We would have preferred to deal with that through diplomacy. Unfortunately, the previous administration decided to tear up a deal that had actually set their ambitions back by many, many months. And now they've been allowed to continue to re-enrich. Nothing we can do about that. We wanted to solve it through diplomacy. We are not able, and we're not focused on returning to the JCPOA at this time. That said, we will make sure we have the appropriate capabilities in the region to defend ourselves and our national security interests if it comes to that.
We got to keep going.
As a result of what is being described as an egregious human rights record, the United States plans to withhold $85 million in military aid to Egypt. U.S. Senator Chris Murphy says this is owing to Cairo's failure to uphold U.S. conditions on freeing political prisoners and other human rights issues. He suggests some of the withheld funds be redirected to Taiwan. Democratic senator also urged U.S. President Joe Biden's administration to withhold the military aid until Egypt's human rights and democracy record improves. The Egyptian embassy in Washington has not reacted to Senator Murphy's comments. Now, Palestinian officials say 5 Palestinians have been killed at the Israeli-Gaza border after an explosive device was detonated accidentally. This comes as protests along the volatile frontier have ticked up after months of relative quiet. Dozens of Gaza youth held a protest along the border in support of Palestinians jailed in Israel. An umbrella group of Palestinian factions said the explosion was caused by a device some of the protesters had planned to use during the rally. Hundreds of shops at a market in Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, have been destroyed after a huge fire tore through the area. Officials say there are no casualties as the blaze swept through the market in the early hours of Thursday before stores opened for business. According to firefighters, the fire had spread quickly in the Mohammadpur market due to a large amount of flammable items such as cooking oil and plastics that had been stored there. A fire service official said the fire was likely caused by an electric short circuit. Indonesian authorities are battling forest fires in the South Sumatra province as haze clouds covered nearby cities. At least 6 Indonesian provinces in Sumatra and Borneo were battling forest fires. Indonesian Disaster Agency Chief Suharyanto said, adding that further plans were being made for cloud seeding to stop the fires. Indonesia is expecting its rainy season to start in November, a month later than usual, after what is forecast to be the most severe dry season since 2019, caused by the El Niño weather pattern. The nation's meteorology agency said on Friday, the Southeast Asian nation has previously experienced devastating forest fires in 2015 and 2019 that blanketed the country and parts of neighboring countries with haze. Part of efforts to tackle illegal migration, British opposition leader Keir Starmer says a Labour government would set up a new police unit, and he suggests being open to a returns agreement for asylum seekers with the European Union to solve the crisis. After talks in The Hague with officials from the EU police force, Europol, Mr. Starmer said the Conservative government had, quote, lost control of our borders, as seen in the large numbers of migrants crossing the Channel to Britain. Mr. Starmer describes comments from the Conservatives that a charge from his plan could open the way for 100,000 asylum seekers to enter Britain as embarrassing. How to tackle illegal immigration is set to be a major battleground for both Labour and the Conservatives in a national election expected next year, with many voters angry over the housing of migrants in costly hotels.
The government has lost control of our borders, and we can see that with the number of crossings there are across the Channel in small boats. We have to stop that. And I think the only way to stop that is to smash the gangs that are running this vile trade. And that's why I've been exploring today at Europol with police teams, with prosecutorial teams, whether we can get a closer agreement that would allow us to share information more quickly, to have joint operations, to take down those that are running this vile trade by stopping those boats getting in the water in the first place. That is taking control of a situation that the government has totally lost control of. It's embarrassing that the government is pumping out this nonsense. I can only assume it's because they've got nothing sensible to say on the issue. What I'm discussing today is a security agreement, sharing of information, operationalising the way that we can smash these gangs. I think anybody watching this would say that's common sense, we need to do it, get on with it. But I'm afraid this is now typical from a government that's completely lost control of the situation.
U.S. authorities say a murderer who escaped from a U.S. jail 2 weeks ago was captured by a law enforcement dog after a heat-sensing aircraft located him. 34-year-old Danilo Cavalcante was arrested in a wooded area in Pennsylvania on Wednesday as he tried to crawl away from officers who had surrounded him. More than 500 officers were deployed to hunt him down after he escaped on the 31st of August, a week after being sentenced to life in prison for killing his ex-girlfriend in front of her 2 children in 2021. The 2-week manhunt spanned a large area of the state, with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro adding that Cavalcante was apprehended with no shots fired. Let's give it up for another athlete. This time, it's endurance athlete Lewis Pugh. You must be wondering why he's in the news. He's become the first person to swim the entire length of New York State's Hudson River, unassisted and without a wetsuit. The 53-year-old United Nations Environment Program patron of the oceans completed the last mile of his 315-mile journey on Wednesday in a light drizzle and came ashore at Manhattan's Battery Park to cheers and applause. Pugh's odyssey kicked off a month ago on August 13th in a pond that is considered the source of the Hudson, just below the peak of Mount Marcy, south of Lake Placid, New York. He continued down the length of the river wearing only a Speedo, cap, and goggles.
My mission now is to take this message around the world to other rivers that, your rivers can be saved.
And finally, if you like flying kites, hop on one as professional kite flyers and amateur enthusiasts gather to fly dozens of kites at Bondi Beach during Australia's largest kite festival, the Festival of the Winds in Sydney. The event not only drew kite flyers, but also tourists, with fans flying kites of all sizes and shapes. The Festival of the Winds originated in 1978 when a passionate group of wind energy enthusiasts organized a kite festival on Bondi Beach. This festival has since become one of the largest and most loved kite flying events in the world. And that's it for The World Today. I'm Susan Ilian, and I'm going to see you tomorrow.